Good evening. Welcome to the Tuesday, March 4th, regular meeting of the Town of Orange Planning and Zoning Commission. I'd like to ask those in attendance to please introduce themselves.
Tamara Costello, Administrative Assistant.
Rick Miagioni.
Ozzy Parenti.
Judy Smith-Morgan.
Paul Denise, Zoning Administrator and Enforcement Officer.
I'm Commissioner Walter Clark. Commissioner Paul Kaplan will not be joining us this evening. On behalf of the Commission and the staff, I would like to extend our condolences to the families and friends of the two young men who were killed in a tragic automobile accident yesterday, and I'd like to ask for a brief moment of silence. Thank you. I'd like to point out the location of our emergency exits for those seated in the audience. The first one is in the middle of the room to my right, your left, where most of us enter and exit the building from on a regular basis. The other two are in the hallway, again to my right, your left. The first one on the left-hand side immediately upon entering the hallway. The final exit and entrance is at the end of that hallway. First item on tonight's agenda is a request from Fieldstone Village, from Anderson Wilcox rather, for project grade adjustments for Fieldstone Village. I do not see the applicant present. Paul, did you have any contact with them?
Yeah, I talked to Doug Anderson on the phone last week. I thought he was going to be here.
Okay. Well, we'll move on with the agenda, and if they arrive, we'll address the situation. Does anybody have any comments or questions on that proposal?
Or just in wetlands, they weren't there also. We just read the letter into the record.
Okay.
I think they just want to know if the commission's for it before they draw the plans.
Before they draw the plans.
Right.
Okay.
In talking to Scott, the process would be that I guess if you guys conceptually embraced it at the meeting.
Right.
If we did the same thing, then they would then go with the plans to wetlands and then come back with formalized
They didn't want to
plans.
spend the money to draw the plans
Right.
if we already had a negative.
Yeah. I don't have any objection to the plan as I understand their proposal. The most critical aspect of that is the homes that adjoin or are adjacent to Skyview Drive. And my understanding is that those elevations will not change, and it's only the lower portion of the project that will change.
That's correct. It's only the lower.
I do have a little bit of concern when we read further down in the letter. There was a notation in there that they wish to have things approved administratively in the interest of time. I think typically we do that except in cases where Paul and or Scott feel that it's gone a little bit beyond where they feel comfortable making an administrative decision. I don't know if they're asking for some type of
I think
more
the process
variance on
that Scott and I talked about was that if you conceptually don't have a problem or issue, it's going to go back to wetlands with the plans and then back to you with the plans.
We are going to review a plan because there's no way you could do this project just by eye. You're going to need plans and grades.
It's a sizable project. Are there any other thoughts or comments from the Commission?
The way I read this, I mean, they do specify what it is they would like to do, but I think that they want that change they describe and others, whatever may come up, to be handled administratively rather than coming to the Commission. I think that's the real gist of the letter.
Yeah. And as I said,
my only question is a proposed modification like that, one that can be done administratively, or does it require that the Commission here does it need to be noticed as a public
I think for something like this, because there was so much interest in the elevations and the grading, that it be done at the public meetings.
Yeah. Does it require a public hearing?
No, not required.
No, it shouldn't require a public hearing, but it should occur at a public meeting.
And that's typical of a lot of site plans. They do, Paul and Scott do make administrative changes, but they also make judgment calls as to the size and effect of their changes. The applicant just came in. If you'd like to address us, or we're discussing you, Doug.
Oh, okay.
So I have no problem with that, and leaving it to Paul and Scott's judgment as to what should be done administratively, and if something comes up that they feel the Commission should review, then go forward with that. I wouldn't want to give them carte blanche to leave it in Paul's or Scott's hands. Not that they're not capable, but it goes beyond the scope of their responsibility.
Well, it's, yeah, something.
Says in the letter, should anything be deemed a substantial or material change, you would of course bring it back to the commission for review and acceptance. So I'm assuming that it's up to Scott and Paul to determine if it's.
Doug, you may
material.
want to just put your drawing up.
For the record, Doug Anderson from Anderson Wilcox. As you read in the letter, in kind of going through the process here, we kind of realized a couple things that might make more sense with respect to the overall development plan and kind of have an immaterial effect on the overall final product. So, and essentially is by raising the site more or less from the edge of the southerly side of Sunrise Hill Circle and almost on a kind of a hinged type scenario. What I did here is, this is kind of rough, but sort of kind of explains.
Here, Doug, why don't we put it up with the clips?
What we've done, we've kind of highlighted here in the yellow as our existing road grade contours, and they basically start at elevation 246, get down to about 240, and then come all the way back up to 270. So a little bit of grade elevation, generally sloping this way, if you will. So, knowing one of the concerns was, raising the site in aggregate, if you will, the whole site. There was some talk maybe about some concern that bringing these units up would, obstruct or come into view, if you will, of the residents on Skyview. We are substantially below those, but just, kind of erring on the side of conservancy, we've said if what we do is more or less pick the grading up from 246 to 248, 248 to 250, so consistently at 2 foot, and that might change, by 2.5 foot, 18 inches, something like that, as we kind of rework that, and catch basins may move a little bit here or there, because there's really there's 2 points of interaction, the main entry and the interaction with the entry over on the community center, and then obviously there's the entry over here, but because of the grading and so forth, that grades out okay. So what we had thought we would do is we would more or less keep the road grade along the upper or southerly side of the site consistent with the plan, and the plan generally has a pretty good pickup, if you will, of elevation between Sunrise Hill Circle, this Yarrow Way, and then Goose Lane, which is kind of denoted in the walkout scenario of what we call the larger homes there. So what we'd like to do is, like I said, keep this grading more or less the same, and sort of basically take the site and kind of tilt it back this way a little bit, and consistently pick the grade up, as I had said, between 18 inches and 30 inches throughout the whole northerly and side of Sunrise Hill, Deerfield Lane, so on and so forth, all still substantially below the grade, which is at 280, more or less, along Skyview Road. So this road system is 20 to 25 feet below, the existing grade here. Obviously, a little higher up in this area, but visually, we feel will have no impact with respect to the homes that we're building or the existing homes, coupled with the fact that we have a substantial tree buffer, that has trees in excess of 15 plus feet. So the reality is, you could probably bring these units up to 2 feet, and it would be immaterial to the to Skyview. But again, just kind of keeping everybody on the same page, thought it'd be prudent just to kind of leave those and pick the grade up there. And basically, what it does, we have two situations that occur where we're tying into the basin here, where we have still the ability to grade into this area without, you know, any kind of material change to the grading or aesthetics. A little tight point around the edge of this building here, which might, you know, require an 18-inch to 24-inch kind of little retaining wall, if you will, that will kind of tie into the grade there. And more or less, we should be able to grade this all out. There are walkouts without, again, materially affecting the visual of what the project is. So,
Doug, I have two questions. You said that the grade on the upper road here, or the most southerly road, I'll call it,
correct,
is going to remain substantially the same.
Correct. Yeah.
How substantially? Is it going to be exactly the same?
Yeah, basically, what we're proposing here is, as you make your way up the hill, proposed contour grade was 250 at this point. What we're saying is we'd like to bring this up to 252, and then the only change really in grade on the southerly side of here was where this was called at 252 before, and again, this is mostly on Grassy Hill Road.
Okay.
We need to get to 254, so instead of 252, this might be 253.
Okay.
Okay, so that first duplex adjacent to Grassy Hill might be 253, and then we will get back exactly right on track with where we are here, 254, 56, 58, 60, 62, and then here this kind of dove back down to 260, where we're saying, well, we'll change that to 261.
So instead of a dive, you'll make that a gradual.
More of a gradual slope, and the same thing here, 260. So 258, 260, 256, 258. So consistently, more or less a 2-foot increase in grade through the center here. Coming around all around the backside of Skyview, you know, 260, 262, 64, 66, 68, all consistent, 270, the high point of the site, which is where you start to get back to where the other homes that we have are up here. And then instead of diving down in such a steep format from 268 to 266 before, what we're thinking is, you know, 268 to 267, and then 264 to 266. So that gradually will allow us to just kind of like pick that grade up, really.
But the critical component, which, as you know, is the residential
visual,
Skyview,
correct.
and that's not going to change at all.
Not at all.
Okay. You noted in your letter that this is going to result in a substantial decrease in the amount of material that's going to be removed from the site. Any
Correct.
idea how many loads?
The load. This will almost balance the site, maybe with even just a little bit of a shortfall with respect to the grading, you know, existing topography, proposed topography. But the other, you know, big generator is obviously all the cellar holes that are you know, part of this project. So some of that material may go and actually completely balance the site. It's not much. It's very close. But what it will do is, obviously, you know, if we had to remove this excess fill on this, just call it general cut fill to establish grade, you know, we're talking about a relatively large surplus of material in a short time frame, which means heavy activity over a long period, you know, over a short period of time. Whereas as the homes get built over the 5 years, if you will, a couple hundred yards per foundation leaves the site. You know, ideally in a perfect world, we would pick it up even more and pick up the fill that we would generate from here, but it just gets a little complicated with utilities and so forth if we can't get the base grade established. So, you know, it just allows us kind of to disperse that excess fill over.
But it will be a significant reduction in truck traffic leaving the site?
Correct, yeah. Okay. Like I said, almost to the point of, I mean, there's still truck traffic, obviously, but we've almost got the site to balance completely, where I think we were plus, you know, 100,000+
Yeah, it was
net
significant.
off. Yeah, it might have even been more, so.
I don't object to the plan. In theory, it has to go back to wetlands, as I understand it, and then
Oh, they're coming back with a drawn up
finalized plan.
with the grades.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah, basically, I mean, what we were trying to do is, you know, versus spending a lot of time and investment in coming up with a new grading plan, is like Scott presented, is conceptually this is what we want to do. Obviously, if it's okay with wetlands, if it's okay with you guys, you know, we'll do all the work, we'll get the plans, get the grading, all the new, you know, call it a, you know, revision set, if you will.
because even though he wants to raise it 2 feet, the slopes of the road are gonna change and locations of catch basins are
Sure.
gonna change
Yeah.
to catch the water.
Absolutely.
Right. You know, and now I see you're grading already near Route 34. Is that asphalt grade there now? I mean, it looks pretty high already.
Up in this area here?
Yeah.
That's base grade right now.
Base grade?
Yeah. And that's actually not, that's, there are actually some stakes out there that, it's probably filled to this point, at this point in time, so that will start to get, they'll
No,
start to
because if
tow
you're
that
pushing
in.
the house further back.
House, locations won't stay.
House is not gonna move back. They're just gonna be higher.
No, no, I mean, right now, what he has graded, if the house is going back of what he has graded, it's gonna be a steep drop from the back of the house to Route 34.
Yeah,
That's
this,
what I'm
well,
asking.
these are all walkouts, so we're
Okay.
gonna actually pick up quite a bit of
Okay,
grade.
that's what we could do?
We're gonna
Okay.
pick up grade
Okay.
from you know, from road elevations to walkout, that's
From the basement?
8, 9 feet.
Walk out from the
correct.
basement, okay.
Exactly. I mean, they may not be walkouts, but they'll be walkout style houses, you know, maybe with windows or something, but probably not doors out, if you will, to.
No, if you went any higher, you might need a wall there, with the way you're.
Yeah,
going.
this, right now, this grades out fine, and actually, we have, like I said, we have more, you know, where we can grade, and we're more or less talking 2 feet, so, we may even be able to
But see, when
to
you say.
to
2
drop
feet-
these down
Right,
maybe
when
a
you say
foot.
2 feet for the road, the house is 2 feet higher too, so it's 4 feet.
No, it's 2, the net is 2. In other words, we're just picking up 2 feet, but we may be able to, we haven't committed to this, but we may be able to drop these units a foot. So our net fill, because basically, obviously, if you're 2 feet, if everything's 2 feet, that means you have to grade out, you have to pick up that 2 feet in grade, if you will. So that means, more or less, you're talking one more contour line to meet the existing grade by picking everything up 2 feet.
Right, but when you do the whole site 2 feet, the houses have to go up also, they can't stay the
Correct.
same, right?
But the relationship to the road and the houses stays the same.
Same, yeah.
It's just that final grade behind the house is what, so it won't be 4 feet, it would be 2 feet. And we may play around with it, we may be able to drop these a foot, so our net is a.
Yeah, the only concern is where Route 34 is. If, you know what I'm
Correct.
saying, if you look at it, it's gonna be steep back there. I just don't know where the location of the homes will be compared to what you have graded already.
Yeah, I think-
Just driving by, looking at it.
Yeah, but that's only changing, as
It's
you
about a-
said, by 2 feet anyways. The grade will have to be extended more because of the increase in the contour line.
Correct, yeah. And we're about 100 feet off a 34 curb right now, 120, something like that.
So I guess what he's asking for now is an approval in concept of this proposal. Do we need to take a vote on it, or just express our consideration, or?
Just wait until they get the plans in front of you, that's fine. I think you let the applicant know that there's no issues
Do
with
the
it.
commissioners have any concerns or questions on this proposal?
No.
Sounds good to us.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Time.
The next item on tonight's agenda is a review and discussion of proposed sign regulations. I had sent out an email with the revisions of what we had discussed at our last meeting to the best of my ability to read my notes. I didn't get back to them for about a week, and when I was looking over my, I was a little confused in my own scribble there. So I believe I included all the revisions that we discussed, and I didn't know if I had erred, and if anybody noticed any errors that I had made in interpreting my notes. And I also spoke to the town attorney. He had done a preliminary review of our sign regulations, not just the proposal, but in general. And he wanted to have a little bit more time to review them a little bit more thoroughly. So as far as the discussion goes this evening, I just wanted to see if there was anything that I missed from our discussion at our previous meeting. If I didn't include it or included it improperly.
The temporary signs, just, I remember talking about it last time about, like, the Halloween sales or whatever going out of business. You know, they throw 300 signs down the,
Yeah.
is that allowed?
Under the proposal, that type of temporary signage, well, first of all, under the proposal, that square footage that you're describing, that 300, I know you're exaggerating, but
Right.
I understand the point. That would not be allowed, and any type of temporary sign would come before us as a special exception or special use. So they'd have to come before us and describe what they're going to do.
Okay.
So we'd have a chance to review it and say, no, that's excessive, or it doesn't meet our, the regulations.
No, 'cause
And that's under the
right,
proposal.
temporary signs for me would be like grand opening, a construction company,
All right, well, the construction ones, we also dealt with on there's a separate subsection, if you will, for
Right.
construction signs. And they also included the temporary signs for a grand opening, even for a sale. But, those are also just proposals. What we come up with at the end of the public hearing on this issue, may not reflect what we have in front of us at this point, or may not very closely reflect what we have in front of us. But we had discussed certain things and moving around certain designations and some wording, and I believe I incorporated all of those suggestions and comments into the summary that I had, and I just wanted to confirm that I did it correctly.
It seems like you did. I mean, we covered a lot of ground in that last meeting on these things. What's are we going to get this now printed in draft form?
What we're gonna do is what I expect to do is that I'm gonna get together with Vinny sometime before our next meeting. See if he has any strong concerns of things we should change or amend here, and then we'll ask Mr. Miller to come and sit down, and we'll go over and come up with a final draft with Mr. Miller here with us, probably Vinny as well, so that we don't cross any legal lines, and then we'll have a final draft and take a vote on it if we decide to go that route and then amend the regulation. Then Paul will have to send it out for notice and schedule a public hearing.
Okay.
So that's where we stand
I would just
now.
mention, when we do get to the public hearing point, that we make sure we let the Orange Chamber of Commerce and businesses know when we're
Yes.
holding where and when our public hearings are,
Absolutely, yeah. That's a
so that
good
we can get their
suggestion.
input.
Absolutely, yep. Okay, so,
So you plan to submit it in this form to Vinny and to...
I did submit it in that form to Vinny and Brian.
Brian, okay.
And Vinny did review, but he said in going over these sign regulations, there's so many different instances of case law to deal with, so many different aspects of it.
There's a long history of case law in Connecticut, and that has to do with the constitutionality of sign regulations. And we kind of had to, at a moment's notice, change our sign regulations when Granite Outdoor Billboard Company took the town of Orange to court. And it's my recollection and understanding that if one portion of the sign regulations was deemed to be unconstitutional, the rest of the sign regulations are also deemed to be invalid, whether or not we have a clause there that prohibits that.
Vinny seemed to think that the severability clause would cover us there.
Okay.
And he was going to draft a severability clause to be included in his proposal as well.
There were a number of concerns along the constitutional, that had to do with constitutional issues. Real estate signs was one of them,
Yes.
where there was a lot of case law, and Vinny's still looking into it, but in terms of what we can and can't regulate, it's still kind of up in the air at the moment. And there were some very interesting cases that he talked to me about in my office, but
Yeah.
I think those are the types of things he has to look at.
He ended up spending quite a bit more time than he thought he would have to on this, and realized he's going to have to spend quite a bit more time on this. It's just the nature of the beast, and it's a tough area. And even from a few conversations I've had with Brian Miller, he says the same. It's one of those things where you have gray areas, and you have either that or you end up with a regulation that's as thick as our entire book of regulations. It's just a tough thing to deal with, to try to get all your bases covered as reasonably as you can. And even when you do that, there's still going to be areas where if somebody wanted to, they probably could challenge your regulation. So it's a difficult task, but we're making progress. So, any other questions or comments on the signs? There being none, we'll move on to a review of the minutes from the February 19th meeting.
I have just one amendment. I'm listed as being in attendance, and I was not here. So, yeah, I was here in spirit, though.
That doesn't count.
You can't vote.
I had a couple things, Tammy. On page 1, on the third paragraph, under the request for modification of site plan approval, it says Chairman Clark commented according to the plans, a significant portion of the building, and it goes on a brief discussion ensued concerning the shingles. That should be specified, the roof shingles, because that was what we were talking about there. Just prior to that, in that first sentence too, dumpster, there should be a period. first paragraph, last sentence. A brief discussion ensued. And on page 2, under old business, it says the status of the Marsh Hill Road zoning study was discussed. Mr. Denise noted that Chairman Clark and planning consultant Brian Miller are reviewing contract details. Brian and I weren't reviewing contract details. We had spoken about, he was wondering how the process was going, what was going on with the contract, where it lied. But we weren't discussing the details of the contract. We leave that to Vinnie. So I don't know if we would just want to just strike it as fine. And Brian and I had just talked about the status of it. He had questioned where it was as far as going through the town and when we could expect it to move forward. And those are the only comments that I have. Are there any other changes or observations?
Make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Good motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Abstained? 301. The next item on tonight's agenda is old business. I have nothing to add under old business. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to bring up under old business? There being none, we'll move on to new business. The only thing I had under new business is Paul included this act from the state. Excuse me. Now, did you interpret this the entire?
No, I was trying to recall today where I got that.
Okay.
It might have been from Brian. It might have been from Brian Miller.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure, but I was trying to find where I found that today.
I will call Brian and review this with Brian and report what we find out to the commission at our next meeting then. The next item on tonight's agenda is a report from the zoning enforcement officer.
I think you got a number of abatement orders. We did a lot of residential enforcement. Also did quite a bit of sign enforcement. I think I gave you a list of some of the items I addressed last week. I was out yesterday and today, and I have another list that I also addressed, but I didn't have time to document that yet. It'll be done tomorrow, and I'll email that out to you. But in the past 4 business days, we've confiscated a number of signs. We've issued some orders. I had quite a few meetings with merchants. Part of the reason why I didn't have the second part of the written update for you is because I spent most of the day with applicants for sign permits or to explain where we were in the process of updating our regulations. But you do have a listing of some of the activities, and if there's an illegal sign that's out there now, it's got to be one that has been put up within the past 24 hours, or if an illegal sign does tend to go up, I'll get 4 to 5 calls from other merchants saying this sign is up. So.
One thing, too, just to mention, I'm sure several of you probably saw the article in the New Haven Register concerning the sign regulations in Milford and the ruling by the state that the ZEO did not have the authority to issue fines. Paul can explain it better than I, but we are correct in issuing our fines the way we do it here.
I think what they were talking about was their zoning ordinance. The way we approached the fining, the citations ordinance here, is we made it a municipal ordinance, which is separate and apart from the zoning ordinance. And that's never been challenged to date. There's a number of communities that have gone that way.
So what the article was saying, or the statute they said, was that the zoning under 8.2 does not give us the authority to establish fines, but a municipality does have the authority to establish fines, and that's how we approach it here in the town of Orange. And apparently the Milford regulation was coming at it from a different tack, and therein was the problem. Are there any other questions or comments for Paul?
I have just a statement to make on the trash over at Target, on that embankment that faces the residential. It's just all littered. And
Okay.
even some of the areas of their parking lot.
Okay, I have issued warnings to them in the past. I'll take a look at it. and
Okay, yeah, if you
If
could,
we
thank
might
you.
be able to do more than just a warning this time.
Okay.
Thank you, Judy. Are there any other questions or comments for Paul? There being none, we'll move on to the next portion of our meeting, which is our public hearing I'll ask Secretary Oscar Parenti to read the public notice there.
Okay. Notice is hereby given that on Tuesday, March 4, 2008, at 8 p.m. at the Orange Town Hall, 617 Orange Center Road, the Orange Town Plan and Zoning Commission will conduct a public hearing on the following. Application for the conversion of a single-family dwelling to accommodate an elderly apartment. Application number 65 for property known as 419 Orange Center Road, submitted by owner Bonnie Lee Perlaka, to construct a 900 square foot elderly apartment. A copy of this notice has been filed with the Orange Town Clerk, dated in Orange, Connecticut, this 14th day of February 2008.
Thank you very much. The first item on our public hearing, though, is a continuation of the re-subdivision application noted as Farm River Estates, submitted by Farm River Estates, LLC. Would the applicant like to come forward?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. My name is Robert Weway. I'm a professional engineer and principal with the firm of Codas Bodian Associates, with offices located at 504 Boston Post Road in Orange, Connecticut. What I'd like to do is just bring the Commission up to date. At the last hearing, there were a number of revisions that were presented to the Commission for consideration with regards to the lot configurations and inclusion of the open space. At the conclusion of that meeting, it was the request of this Commission that we resubmit the plans or run the plans by the Inland Wetlands Commission, and also to explore and investigate the inclusion of some parking spaces, which were also the request of the Conservation Commission, for providing access to the open space. And we've basically accomplished all the items that the Commission put to our task. And what I'd like to do is just distribute a couple of handouts, and these were also used at the Inland Wetlands presentation.
Thank
you. And hopefully there's enough copies to go around. Okay, basically what I'd like to do is just go over the two handouts that I gave out to the Commission tonight. The first one is the plan view, which shows primarily the location of the 4 proposed parking spaces that we have included on the plan. We've also got on a large-scale plan that just basically shows the area with respect to the entire project, and the handout is just a blow-up of that area. What we were able to do is basically provide 4 parallel parking spaces that'll occupy an area approximately 8 feet wide by 80 foot in length. We did sit down with the Wetlands Enforcement Officer, Mr. Scott Allen, to go over the configuration of that and how it would be implemented with respect to the inland wetlands. And primarily the outcome of that meeting we came up with a design for those parking spaces, and what we're going to be doing is basically pitching the parking spaces back towards the existing curb line and eliminate the curb in that area. So basically that gutter line flow will still be maintained. And what that allows us to do is not have any change of the grading at the street line, and therefore it allowed us not to have any further encroachment or impact on the inland wetlands in that area. Now on the second part of the handout, that basically depicts the cross-section that we're describing in that area. So what you can see is that for that 8-foot width, we've basically maintained a 3/8 of an inch per foot standard cross slope, but instead of carrying it down, which would have required more excavation at the street line, we pitched it back up, and when you take into account the 6-inch curb and the snow shelf, there's virtually no change in the grade in this scenario, right along that street line area. So with that, these plans were presented to the Inland Wetlands Commission for their consideration and review, and it was determined from that commission that the proposed changes to the plans did not represent a significant deviation from the approval. And I believe that this commission should have in their file a letter dated March 4th from the commission. If not, I could certainly put this one into the record.
We do have that, correct, Paul?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and then the second item that this commission had asked us to do was basically to run the plans, the revised plans, back before your town sanitarian, so that he could have an opportunity to review them and put forth any comments. And again, we did have a meeting with him to go over the proposed changes in the plans, and he basically concurred with our findings that that with the revised lot layout, there would be no impact to the original septic design that was previously submitted to him. And with that, I believe he issued a memorandum to this commission dated March 3rd. I've got a copy of that if one is not already part of the record.
We do have it in the record.
Okay. So with those items, I believe that takes care of any of the outstanding issues that this commission may have put forth, and hopefully we'll be in a position to have the hearing closed and hopefully have the commission render a favorable decision with respect to the project.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Weiwei? Are there any questions from the public for Mr. Weiwei? The only concern that I have with the layout is the highly irregular lot lines.
Okay.
If we were to eliminate those jogs, these two upper ones in particular, would those lots still conform based on the square footage required and the percentages that's allowed to be wet or steep and so on?
Well, with regards to the area, no. Lot 7, I think if you take a look at the revised subdivision plan, I think we're right on the mark for having the square footage. So that area that's within that stub area, I think, was counted on in terms of coming up with the required lot area. That is lot number 7, and yeah, I think we're over by about 50 square feet total in square footage area. With respect to lot number 6, we've certainly got ample square footage of area. We're at 64,600
But if I recall,
square feet.
The square would be compromised. If you were to move that angle over, the square would be compromised on that one, correct? Because we were right on the line.
No, on lot 6, I don't think we're that bad. What is fairly tight, though, is the percentage of upland area that's required. The minimum of 54,000 square feet is required. With the lot 6 as it's presently configured, we're over by 400 square feet in terms of area. So if you were to start taking and shifting the areas around and the lines, we probably wouldn't be able to meet the square footage requirements on that. And again, the whole, in part by rearranging the open space and then starting to do these access ways, it did have a trickle effect, because as soon as you made one change on one thing, it's got a roller coaster effect on everything else. Because as soon as we did this, then we started to come into frontage issues with regards to the lot frontage on lot 7, and that kind of rolled over into what was happening on lot 8, again with regards to the area and the square requirements. Again, it's a little unique in the sense that we do have the handlebars out and through here too, but I think each application, I think this commission needs to look at each application on its own merits. And again, I think with what you're looking at here, we're showing the strips, but they do have a purpose and they do have an intent. For lot number 6 and 7, these handlebars, if you would, are basically giving these two houses access back to the open space, which they would not otherwise have. And you know, this was all presented in concert to the Conservation Commission also, in terms of the configurations. And again, I think I've got one other drawing, which I think was part of the previous submission. Lot lines are nice to look at on paper, and this is basically the plan that we had back at the commission for the last hearing. And again, the red on here just depicts the areas that we're going to be dedicated as open space to the town of Orange. Now, if we take a closer look at how the houses are on here with respect to the development, you can see that there's, quite a bit of open area. Now, again, the reality is, if you take a look at the same plan, this is the exact same plan with the open spaces area on it, but we don't have the lot lines on it. So again, the reality of the plan is that the houses are going to be built where they're shown. You're maintaining the separating distances between the dwellings, and leave it for not, nobody's going to know that you have that handlebar access there for the most part. Anyway, because you're really not going to have any buildings or structures that are going to take place within those areas.
Questions or comments from the commissioners?
Just be a,
Tell us, just because I can't.
Ma'am, you have to step up to the podium. Yeah, and you're welcome to do so.
I couldn't see what street is
Miss, you
what.
have to get to the podium.
Sorry.
Yeah, just your
Okay.
name and address.
Roz Sperling, 660 St. John's, and I just wanted to know what, I couldn't see from back there, what street is where we're talking, so now I can,
Mr. Weiwei can demonstrate that.
thank you.
I'm not sure what the question was.
Just wanted to know
Okay.
where the street location, she wanted to give it in relationship to her house, I'm assuming, or her street?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to.
Okay, I don't know if we have the subdivision.
Well, this is the existing cul-de-sac on St. John's. So it would extend the cul-de-sac from St. John's up to here, and this road would be new.
Yeah, I mean, the cover sheet has a little bit better locus map, which shows St. John's Drive coming down here. So it's just, as the chairman pointed out, it's just going to be an extension of St. John's Drive. The cul-de-sac that's there right now is going to be abandoned. It'll be reloamed and seeded in that area, and then the roadway just extended down into the subdivision.
Here's where it is now.
Are there any other questions or comments from the commissioners? Observations? Requests for information?
on the box culvert, I know there's a 10-foot drop. What is it, 10-foot drop about 25 feet? There's no, it's just a 6-inch curb on the street. There's no guardrail there, right?
No, there's
There is gonna be a
guardrail
guardrail?
all the way on both sides of the road. You can see it's depicted on your grading plan.
Yeah, is those
So
the
it's-
dots?
Yeah, basically what we did is we set the guide rail up, typically once we have more than a 4-foot drop off the back edge of the street line.
Okay.
If we don't grade that off at a 4-to-1 slope, then we'll typically incorporate a guide rail. And the details for that are included on, within your set of drawings.
There's metal backing to that, or you just gonna use the wood?
I believe we've got the timber guide rails on there. And I'm not sure what the standoffs are. They're typically the DOT standard. I'm not sure if they're using the...
Well, DOT has a metal
Replacement.
plate in back of the wood.
It depends. They've got a couple of different configurations.
Okay.
But they would be the DOT specs.
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, we could...
They have both. The
Yeah,
reason
we
I'm
can
asking,
answer
the
that
wood was snapped
real
versus the one with the metal plate in
Yeah.
the back would, I mean, if you would just need that really over the box culvert, that's where the steepest part is.
Yeah, it's basically just going to be in that immediate area there. The details are on sheet SP8. We've got their 12 by 12 post, and let's see now. These do not appear to have the metal plates on them. They're basically just notches on there with the bolts. I mean, if that's something the commission feels that they need, I mean, we could certainly incorporate that. The plans, you know, we did sit down and go over the plans with Ed Lieberman, and, you know, he didn't seem to have too many concerns with it. But again, if this commission feels it's warranted, then, I mean, we'd certainly change the detail on that.
I would think you would only need it on this side. If you're coming down the curb that way, that's the only way you're gonna get to hit and go over it. The rest of it's too straight.
Jeff, did you?
We usually put on, Jeff Gordon, we usually put on both sides because of ice, sand in the road, anything of that nature. But these are the 12 by 12 posts, and this is a detail with the notches on the inboard side, so you have the full meat of the post on the back side of it to give us some protection. Not the one where they mortise out the center and then they crack in time and whatnot. This is a pretty substantial
Right.
post.
No, because I know they dry out after time.
Do we want to make a requirement that they have a metal backing?
Well, that's what you guys think. I mean,
Well, I agree with you saying, if you have a culvert there that's going to result in a substantial drop, it would
Well, I'm talking about where the culvert, just,
Yes.
the other part, if you hit, you're just gonna end up going
Yeah.
lawn.
Right.
Right.
But in the culvert, and obviously a certain distance on both sides of the culvert, you would need this.
That's what I would think.
Yeah. How far on each side of the culvert would you recommend, 20 feet?
Yeah, what's the culvert, 10 feet? Or-
Yeah, I mean, at the culvert location, we've got approximately 10-foot drop.
No, the actual culvert's 10 foot in width? I forget.
We got, I believe it was an 8-foot, 8 foot wide. The outside diameter on that would be closer to 9.5 or 10 feet.
So 28 feet, 10 feet on either side of the culvert?
Why don't we just do it 30 feet?
Or 30 feet?
Yeah, that's fine.
How far are the spaces between the posts?
I believe they're 8 foot on center. They're either going to be 8s or 10s. Actually, these are 6.
So 30 works then? Yeah. Okay. You wouldn't want to have the backing to be midway between, doesn't make sense, so. Are there any other requests for information? I think what I'd like to do here is, if the commission agrees, is close the public hearing and wait and debate it when Commissioner Kaplan can join us. And we can also move on with the public hearing for the proposed elderly affordable housing, the elderly apartment as well. And that way Bill doesn't have to wait around all night. If the commission agrees with that approach?
Well, you said Paul's expected, or?
No, Paul's not coming this
Okay.
evening.
Close the public
But
hearing.
if we don't need any further information, we can close the public hearing and then deliberate at our next meeting. That's what the commission agrees with that approach.
Make a motion to close the public hearing on the re-subdivision application from River Estates.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion to pass to close the public hearing passes 4-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is an application for the conversion of a single-family dwelling to accommodate an elderly apartment. Would the applicant like to come forward, please?
Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you?
Good, and yourself?
I'm doing great. My name's Eric Lindgren. I'm the contractor of record for this single dwelling representing Bonnie Palacha, the owner of the house.
Can you give us a brief description of the project?
Certainly. Right now, the house, what my aunt wants to do is put an elderly housing unit for her attached to the dwelling of 900 square feet and put the parking below that. So, and that's basically it. Her son will occupy the other half, or the original house. She'll occupy the new portion of it. We're trying to keep it in style of sort of a country barn look, attached to the house. And that's right. Does that satisfy the?
Yeah, I just have, now the purpose of these little notches here, both here and also here, these little nooks, is that to keep it under the 900 square feet?
That's to keep it under, but also a visual break so we don't get a continuous long line. I couldn't come any closer to the street because we're right at the 50-foot mark.
Yes.
I would have liked to have done that, however, I couldn't do it, so somehow visually I had to break that straight line, is what I felt.
And access to the new portion, if you will, is from the basement and also the sliders, correct? Is there any
Correct.
additional, I didn't see any other doors.
There are no other doors.
Okay. We're adding one more bay. We had a notation from the town sanitarian. He has certain requirements that if we were to approve this, we have to make those conditional. Requires an expansion of the existing system, an upgrading of the tank, an extension of the leaching fields, and the wetlands enforcement officer requires that stormwater discharge from the new roof area must go into an underground structure.
Correct.
Have they been incorporated? I mean, no, they're not on this part of the plan, but
No, but when we go further from this point, we'll have those in. As a matter of fact, there is from the sanitary contractor, there is a plan already existing for that. That's been reviewed by the sanitarian.
Okay.
And I should say reviewed and approved already for that, so.
Is there going to be a walk-up attic?
What's that?
A walk-up attic?
Right now, there is no, we can't, because we only have the 900 square feet. We may at some point attach it to the other residence. There'll be a pull-down stair for access up there at this point, but there'll be no stairway for it.
The upper attic, at some point, they could attach it to the part of the main home, as long as there's no connection to this portion.
Well, I could just see the design.
Yeah.
That you could.
Sure, yeah, because
Use it.
you would have that other
Right.
story there. I really see no issues. It meets all the criteria for the conversion of the single-family home to accommodate an elderly apartment. The home, in addition, meet the setback requirements. We've got the conditions in there that are proposed by the town sanitarian and by the wetlands enforcement officer that the applicant is aware of, and they would obviously be conditional, be included on any proposal that we would go forward with. It meets all their criteria. There's no additional front door, which is one of the concerns when we do these applications. It seems to fit the regulations perfectly.
And I think aesthetically, it'll fit nicely with the existing house.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments from the commission? Are there any questions or comments from the sole member of the public here? No. Do we require any further information from the applicant? There being none, I would ask that we, for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved?
I'll second it.
We have a motion, it's been seconded. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor of closing the public hearing signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes 4-0. As I just stated, I see no objection to this. It meets all the criteria that are outlined in our regulations. It meets all the setback requirements. Paul, do you have any comments or?
No comments.
There are two conditions that would have to be applied to any approval that the applicant is aware of. Other than that, I see no reason to not go forward with this, and I would ask if any commissioner has would like to make a motion.
Make a motion to approve the application for the conversion of a single-family dwelling to accommodate an elderly apartment. Application number 65 for property known as 419 Orange Center Road, submitted by owner Bonnie Lee Delicia to construct a 900 square foot elderly apartment. And also the conditions for the sanitarian and Scott Allen to be met.
Yes. We have a motion. Would anybody care to second it?
Second?
Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes 4-0. You're approved.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
you.
that.
Now, without Paul here, we might be here all night because we have nobody to make the motion to adjourn. But we'll see if somebody can fill his shoes. We have a motion. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye. Aye. Meeting adjourned at 8:23.